Morning and welcome to another demo for the Red9 ProPack. This one is about the R9 anim format. This is something that we've been working on a lot recently for several clients, and also just to expand the systems more generally. So if we go to ProPack and we go to, where are we? Oh, well, no, animation load save. Now then, at the moment, ProPack is only available to clients who are signing up to support. Generally, the way it's going is that we're doing a lot more production tools, but they're kind of bespoke and integrated into the bigger picture of how to work in the production pipeline, as opposed to tools for everybody's generic rig, which is actually quite difficult to write. Anyway, let's go through this one. So what I'm going to do, this is a piece of generic mocap. This is from Mayer's own mocap libraries. It's just something we tend to sample off. And this is the Red9 production rig as well, so you'll see this a lot on some of the demos moving forwards. So the idea with the animation load save, basically it's to try and replace Atom, and it's to try and give you guys a solid animation library. An animation library that's a little bit more intelligent and less generic. You notice up here, set prefix. By default, everything we do with clients is based on our meta rig, so everything's wired to meta rig. But the code base of this will still run with, like Pose said, will still run with other presets. And in fact, we pick more for example, this set root suddenly comes on. So this is the filter system, and it kind of does work with others, but we're trying to get away from that, primarily because every different rig does things differently, and it's very difficult to catch exceptions in all of those. So this bit of mocap, we're just going to save it out. I'm going to save data. Right, there's a few things to note on this UI. It looks slightly more complicated than it should be, but actually it's doing an awful lot in the background. So first thing, with this animation, let's say I'm going to put a note on this animation file. So I'm going to say this is a bit of generic layer mocap. Animation, that'll do. Okay. Animation, I can't spell. Animation, there we go. This user info is stored inside the file, and the idea is that the file has an info metadata block. So before you even load the data, we can inspect and return back exactly what is in that file. That's really useful if we have to poll lots of batches of files. And it also gives you an idea of what's coming up. You don't actually have to load the file to see what the damn thing is. So I'm going to store that animation out and save it as I won't save it as that, we'll save it as test, just so you can see it's actually saved the damn thing, test. Now on save, it's really fast, and the reason for that is that we just store the anim curves. It's not at the moment doing any bake sampling, it's just storing the animation data as it's there. The only exception is that if you have animation layers, what it will do is it will pre-bake them in the background, take the cache data that's been baked, save that, and then restore your layers. So it doesn't destroy, it's not a destructive process, but it deals with the layers. We will put a bake in there at some point, so it frame samples in case you've got constraints, etc. But at the moment, it's just a pure animation format. Now then, remember this thing down here. If I blank that, if I go and I come into this, what do we call it? Test. We load that. What you get is a lot of feedback. So first of all, you get the user data, which is a description that we just typed up. So if we go to many different files, this will obviously reflect what's in that file. The other thing is we have this internal file info, and this is showing you everything that we know about that file, or rather everything I've exposed currently. So we know who wrote it, I did. The data is written, the frames that are in there, so it started at frame 0, ended at frame 151, obviously there's 151 frames duration. There is a timecode. Our base production rig comes with timecode systems internally, and the R9 format now stores that out, so it knows the timecode. And you'll notice on the load, which is currently grayed out because I haven't finished implementing it, there will be a load to timecode. So that will be load this against the timecode of my character or against the scene timecode. That's where we're heading with this stuff. You'll see some generic stuff from the meta rig. It's a biped, meta rig root node, etc., etc. So this is all just general information, but you get that before we've even loaded the file. The other thing on this side that you get is the feedback from what is about to happen related to what you've got on here. So if we load the base, in fact, let's just import a new production rig. If we do that, and we'll shift this guy over a little bit on there. I'll tell you what we'll do with the main root. Just shift him out of the way. Shift him over there. Okay, so you see there's two rigs in a second. So this is the feedback of what will happen when I hit that load button. obviously nothing at the moment. Start frame, it will start at frame 0, it will end at frame 151, which is as you expect, because in the start time we've got as loaded. If I went from current frames, if I actually want to load it from frame 100, you'll see this then reflects it, and it'll say it's going to load from frame 100 up to 251. And there are all sorts of other options which we'll go through in a second. So let's just load this animation flat up. In fact, let's do something different. Let's load up the walk animation first. So we've got a walk animation. If I do that, again it pre-inspects it. We know there's 18 frames, it starts at frame 2 and ends at frame 0. So I'm going to load that as it was stored. And this is telling us it's going to load from frame 2 to frame 20. Load the data. Oh, you also notice this thing, ignore control main. This is kind of a way of handling transform data. Generally, if you're doing game production rigs, or most of the time, you will use this main world controller to shift the character in space. But when we're loading animations and poses, we tend to want to ignore that and just load it to the data itself and leave this in place where it is. That's what this does, ignore routes. It's exactly the same as in the animation systems that you're all used to. If we load up the animation load, it's exactly the same as that button there, ignore routes. It just skips using the CTRL line, which is that thing. Okay, so I'm going to load the walk sit. And the way this thing knows about which rig to load the data to is because it's meta, I can select anything on either of the rigs and it will load to the one that I've got selected. Doesn't matter what it is, it's anything on that rig, just to identify that it's this system I'm bothered about. So I'm going to select the head, for example, and I'm going to load it stored. Okay, so we've now got a walk, which is obviously the first few frames of that walk cycle loading in. But let's say we want to now stitch together the walk, and we want to carry him walking on. We're going to have him walking and carrying on walking with the walk sit animation. So we're going to bolt that on. So I'm going to select this route here. Okay, I'm going to go to frame 20. Let's see, because yeah, frame 20, because we want to load it from frame 20, maybe frame 21. Let's do it from 20. And I want to load it from the current frame, so I'm going to load it from frame 20. Again, this thing down here will tell us what's going on. So we're going to take our test anim that we did, which is the walk sit, and if I switch that, you see it's going to load from frame 20 and it's going to end at frame 171. I'm also going to hit the set playback timelines, which is going to set the timelines for me afterwards, and it will set it to this data here. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load it relative. Again, this is directly the same as the stuff down here. This is the same system, the same intelligence, except we've now expanded it using the animation redirector so that it will work with animation data. So I'm going to load it relative to this node here at that frame, load relative to node, and you'll see again these all update down here in the feedback of what am I about to do. So we know I'm going to ignore the main controller. I'm going to load it relative to the selected node, which is that node there, from frame 20 to frame 171 load. And you'll see this will do a couple of passes, because it's got to first of all load the data as it was, cache that, and then load it and recalculate how to load it at the new position. So now at frame 20, he will carry on walking from there, and off he goes. And you'll see he's now in a different position because we've told him to load from frame 20 where this thing was. So it's effectively the animation starting back there. Let's do something a bit more tricky. Let's load it from that facing in this direction, and we'll load it at that point where he's standing up. We'll load the same animation. Let's do it again. So again, this thing at the moment doesn't update. We just have to jog it. Internally it does, it's just the feedback doesn't. I've got to work on that. So we'll load it from that frame 107, and it's the same animation, load. Again, off it goes. I'll do the double. There we go. So what you'll see now is that he will now, at frame 107, which is where we told it to, we've got the walk in the front, which we stitched the second walk to sit animation on, which is why he's going further, because we bolted the walk onto the front of it. And now we've bolted the walk onto that. So there is a lot of possibility in here, because basically what we're doing is we're stitching animations together based on a node in relative space at the time that you're telling to. And we've got information about what's going on here. As I say, this will expand more. It's going to be kind of the cornerstone of all the animation handling systems in Red9. So anyway, gives you an idea of where we're going. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.